Odell Beckham Jr., Drusky, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and now a man named Garon James, who just walked into a courtroom and blew the entire Diddy case wide open all over again. New names keep landing in this saga, and every single one of them makes it worse for Sean Combs. An escort service owner who admitted to supplying over 30 male escorts, then got caught coaching witnesses in front of a sitting judge. NFL stars and comedians formally added to amended lawsuits. His own sons now named in civil claims. Co-conspirators falling one by one. State criminal charges that could land any day, on top of the federal conviction he is already serving. The list of names is not shrinking, it is growing. Today we break down exactly who they are, and why the walls around Sean Combs keep closing in. Let's get into it. To understand why these new names matter, you first have to understand where Sean Combs is standing right now. Because the man who built Bad Boy Records from nothing, who put his name on everything from vodka to fashion to cable television, that man and the man who exists today are not the same person. He is at FCI Fort Dix, a low-security federal correctional institution in New Jersey, after the jury on July 2, 2025, delivered a split verdict that genuinely surprised legal analysts on both sides. Not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, the charge that could have meant life in prison. Not guilty on sex trafficking, but guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution under the Mann Act, tied to his alleged conduct toward Cassie Ventura and a woman identified throughout proceedings only as Jane. 34 witnesses over 7 weeks. Cassie Ventura walked into that courtroom and described in painstaking detail what a decade inside his orbit had looked like. The freak-offs, the coercion, the control. The prosecution argued he had built a criminal enterprise around power and sexual violence. The defense argued the relationships were consensual, and the government had manufactured a narrative. The jury split the difference, and when the verdict landed, his family erupted in relief, while victim advocates called it a failure of accountability. Both reactions were understandable. The conviction that stuck was real, and it carried real consequences. On October 3, 2025, Judge Arun Subramanian sentenced Combs to 50 months in federal prison, 4 years and 2 months, plus a $500,000 fine and 5 years of supervised release. Prosecutors had sought 11 or more years. The defense had argued for 14 months. The judge landed in the middle, and Combs was transferred from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn to Fort Dix, where he has remained ever since. April 25, 2028. That number has already moved more than once. Pushed back after alleged rule violations. Pulled forward again as credits accumulated from his chapel library assignment and his enrollment in the residential drug abuse program, which can shave up to a full year off a federal sentence. That is the situation he is managing from the inside. What the outside world is managing, on his behalf and against him, is a significantly more chaotic story. That story starts with a list of names. During jury selection in a federal trial, the court reads out a list of names, sometimes 100 to 200 people, to screen potential jurors for prior connections to anyone who might come up during proceedings. When that list was read aloud in May of 2025, the names on it were not obscure, they were household names. Yeah, formerly known as Kanye West appeared on that list. Michael B. Jordan surfaced on the same documents. Mike Myers, Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child, Lauren London. Later, names like Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Nas, and Kellis were referenced in passing during testimony. Every time one of these names dropped, the internet reacted as if that person had been charged with a crime, which they had not been. A jury list mention means your name might come up in testimony. It is not an indictment, not an allegation, not a finding of any kind. It is the court doing its job. But in the court of public opinion, that distinction collapsed almost immediately. And the reputational weight that landed on some of these individuals followed regardless of what the legal facts actually were. Being associated with this case, even tangentially and even innocently, carries a cost that no legal disclaimer fully offsets. That reaction, the sense that something much larger is unraveling, is how millions of people are consuming every name that surfaces in this case. And there is a second category of names that carries a fundamentally different legal weight than a jury list. Because a jury list is produced by the court, a civil lawsuit is signed by an attorney with specific allegations against specific individuals. The two are not comparable. In March of 2025, an amended lawsuit connected to a gang rape allegation, an incident alleged to have taken place in Orinda, California in 2018, formally added NFL star Odell Beckham Jr. and comedian Drusky as named defendants alongside Combs. Both men's legal teams have categorically denied the allegations, but these are signed, filed, amended legal documents submitted to an actual court. When you are an active NFL player or a comedian whose entire brand is built on being likable, having your name attached to a gang rape allegation in one of the most toxic celebrity cases in recent memory is not something that simply gets walked back. Kid Cudi's name entered this case through Cassie Ventura's original lawsuit, which alleged Combs had the rapper's car set on fire after learning Cassie had feelings for him. Think about what that allegation actually describes. Not a confrontation, not a heated phone call, but a car deliberately set ablaze as an act of territorial control over another human being. That alleged act was corroborated during the federal trial by multiple witnesses, including law enforcement, who testified about the arson investigation. Dawn Richard, former Danity Kane member, filed her own civil suit alleging she personally witnessed abuse tied to Combs' operations, making her one of a growing number of industry insiders who were not direct targets, but claimed to have been present for what was allegedly happening. Dallas Austin, prominent music producer and former partner of the late Kim Porter, surfaced during trial proceedings. Young Miami, who openly dated Combs, was also referenced in related proceedings. And then there are the names that hit hardest of all, because they share Combs' last name. Christian King Combs and Justin Combs, two of Sean's adult sons, have been named as defendants in separate civil claims. These are the same young men who stood up in open court at their father's sentencing and wept while begging the judge for mercy. The same sons who have been his most visible and most vocal public defenders throughout every chapter of this saga. And now they are defendants. The legal machinery surrounding Sean Combs has extended directly into his own bloodline. And that is a development that carries no clean framing, no easy narrative, and no spin that makes it less serious than it actually is. Whatever the outcome of those civil claims, the fact that they exist at all is a measure of how far-reaching this story has become. The jury list names and the civil defendants are the visible surface of this story. What is happening beneath that surface, in actual courtrooms, with actual witnesses under actual oath, is considerably more dangerous for Sean Combs. There is a name that almost nobody outside of legal circles had heard before this. A name tied to an escort service, a state court hearing, and a courtroom collapse so complete it is now the subject of nationwide conversation. That name is Garon James. And part 2 is entirely about what he just did, smiling at the camera, planning the comeback. And somewhere in a state courtroom, the man he hired to supply male escorts just burned the whole operation down from the witness stand. His name is Garon James, also known as Brett Taylor, an alias he apparently adopted somewhere along the way. He is the owner of an escort service called Cowboys for Angels, and what he failed to contain inside a state courtroom recently is one of the most legally consequential single events to emerge from the Combs case since the federal conviction itself. To understand why it hit so hard, you need to understand what Cowboys for Angels allegedly was, and what its relationship with Sean Combs looked like over multiple years. Brett Taylor was questioned in state court over claims directly tied to Sean Diddy Combs, specifically requests for over 30 male escorts from Cowboys for Angels, provided exclusively for Combs himself, dating back to 2014, not for his female companions, not for guests at his events, for Combs himself, over multiple years, 30 at minimum. And that word matters because 30 is what was admitted to on the stand, not necessarily what the complete records would show. This was a sustained, multi-year business relationship between this escort service and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. And the man running it just confirmed it, under oath, in open court. The legal significance maps directly onto the conviction Combs is already serving. He is in federal prison on Mann Act violations, the statute governing the interstate transportation of individuals for sexual purposes. Cowboys for Angels was allegedly operating squarely within that framework, for Combs specifically. And now the supplier is in a state courtroom confirming it. Federal agents went to his door. He talked. And then he testified to it publicly. Whatever Garin James hoped to keep contained, that was over before he ever took the stand. The substance of what James admitted is only the first layer, because the actual performance of Garin James in that courtroom was, by every account, an absolute catastrophe. He stuttered. His eye movements were described as erratic. His body language made clear to everyone in the room that he had not adequately prepared and had no coherent plan for managing the questions being directed at him. Court reporters described it as a complete demolition. And then it got worse. While still under oath, still in the middle of his own testimony, James was caught attempting to signal to a separate witness in the room, trying to direct what she should and should not say when her turn came, in front of a sitting judge, in an active proceeding. The judge's response was a furious reprimand, the kind a sitting judge reserves for conduct that is not only improper, but genuinely insulting to the institution of the proceedings themselves. Defense lawyers were admonished. James was warned directly. And this is the part that is genuinely difficult to explain. How do you walk into a high-stakes legal proceeding, already carrying the weight of confirmed testimony about supplying escorts to a federal convict, and then attempt to coach a witness while you yourself are the one being questioned under oath? The only answer that makes sense is that the preparation for this hearing simply was not done. Not a high-paying client. That was the pivot. After confirming 30 escorts at minimum, supplied exclusively to one person over multiple years. A client who has received 30 escorts from your service is not a casual customer. The arithmetic destroys the claim, and the attempt at damage control only made things worse because it showed the court that James understood exactly how bad the admission was and had nothing credible to offer in response. Some of those escorts were identified as the same individuals Cassie Ventura had referenced during the federal trial, meaning this testimony does not exist in a vacuum. It connects directly to evidence already entered into the federal record, confirmed now from a completely independent source, in a state court proceeding. A default judgment was awarded against Garin James at the conclusion of the hearing. A damages hearing will follow to determine what compensation the affected escorts are owed. For James, this is both a legal and financial catastrophe. For Combs, it is something potentially far worse, because every element of what James confirmed connects directly back to him. And the people watching most carefully are the state prosecutors reportedly building toward their own charges. Alongside Garin James, Christina Coram and Bridget Collins have been publicly identified as significant co-conspirators in the broader legal proceedings surrounding Combs. Coram is the name most people following this case will recognize. She was a constant visible presence around Combs and was there at the time of his arrest. What happened to Garin James in that hearing mirrors almost exactly what unfolded when Coram faced her own legal reckoning. These are people who built their proximity to Sean Combs into an identity. And now that proximity is the instrument of their destruction. He had been running from process servers, confirmed it on the stand himself. The strategy was apparently to stay invisible, to not accept legal documents, to simply not be findable. His partner reportedly told process servers she was not authorized to accept anything on his behalf. Then James walked into the courtroom and admitted all of this openly to the judge, volunteering yet another layer of self-inflicted damage onto a hearing that was already in complete ruins. Every admission compounded the one before it. Every piece of testimony added another thread connecting directly back to Combs. And then 50 Cent posted about it. Suddenly, every person who had never heard of Cowboys for Angels, Brett Taylor, or Garin James was watching, because when 50 Cent pours gasoline on something, It burns across platforms for days and reaches an audience that would never have found this story on their own. 30 men, confirmed, under oath, in open court by the man who supplied them. And defense attorneys for Brett Taylor indicated during this hearing that state criminal charges against Combs are expected to be announced soon. State charges mean a completely separate prosecution in a completely separate court system. It means Combs could complete his federal sentence on April 25, 2028, and walk directly into a state arrest. The release date becomes a transfer date. And there is also a separate civil trial involving Deontay Nash already scheduled for summer of 2027, meaning even without state charges, his legal calendar extends well past the federal release date he is currently working toward. Part 3 is about whether any of his remaining moves can actually change that math. Let us start with the single most revealing thing Sean Combs has done since entering federal custody. Not the library job, not the RDAP enrollment, not the appeal. The most revealing thing, the one that tells you with absolute clarity how well he understands his own position, is the call he reportedly made to the White House, the President of the United States, publicly, casually, almost dismissively. Confirmed that Combs personally reached out and requested a presidential pardon. Trump confirmed it in a statement to cameras, dropping the name like gossip, rather than a formal legal appeal from a convicted federal prisoner. The pardon did not come. It is not coming. Presidential pardons apply to federal convictions, so Combs' Mann Act conviction is technically within scope. But the political reality of pardoning a man whose trial produced 7 weeks of testimony about coercion, freak-offs, and decade-long alleged abuse is something no political calculation makes workable. The outcome was a public confirmation of the request and a very public non-response. The political avenue is closed, which means everything now rides on the legal avenue. And that has a specific date attached to it. Combs' legal team has appealed his conviction and 50-month sentence to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, arguing the sentence is disproportionately harsh, approximately 4 times the typical guidelines for a Mann Act conviction, given that he was acquitted on the more serious racketeering and sex trafficking charges. His attorneys have formally called it a perversion of justice. They want an acquittal, a reduced sentence, or immediate release pending further proceedings. The Second Circuit fast-tracked the appeal at the request of Combs' legal team, who argued that the brevity of the sentence meant he could theoretically serve the entire thing before a standard appeal timeline was ever heard. Opening brief filed December 2025. Government response submitted February 2026. Reply brief submitted March 2026. Oral arguments are now scheduled for April 9, 2026. And that date is weeks away. If the Second Circuit agrees that the sentence was disproportionate, it could mean resentencing to time already served and immediate release. If the court upholds the sentence in its entirety, and state charges land in the same window, Combs potentially serves consecutive time in 2 completely separate legal systems. There is no middle scenario. This appeal either moves the needle significantly or it changes nothing. And it is being argued against a backdrop in which a state court just produced testimony about 30-plus male escorts. Co-conspirators are cracking under legal pressure, and every new headline makes the argument for leniency harder to sustain. Inside Fort Dix, Combs is working every available credit he can earn: the library shift, the Life Connections program, the RDAP enrollment. None of these are coincidences. They are deliberate, structured moves designed to extract every available sentence reduction credit from the system. In federal prison, good behavior removes 15% off the top. Work assignments generate additional credits. RDAP, the most significant of all, can cut up to a full year off a sentence for eligible participants who complete it. Whether Combs' enrollment represents a genuine commitment to sobriety, a calculated legal strategy, or both, is something only he and those closest to him know. What is not in dispute is that every credit he earns moves that April date closer. All of it counts, and all of it can be undone. The release date has already moved in both directions. pushed back to June 4th after alleged rule violations, including claims of homemade alcohol and an unauthorized three-way phone call that bypassed the prison's monitoring system, both of which Combs's representatives denied strenuously and publicly, stating there had been no violations whatsoever, then pulled forward again to April 25th as behavior stabilized and credits stacked. The number is not fixed. It is a live calculation that responds to every decision made inside that facility, and it has already proven it can move in either direction. One significant violation, and it goes the wrong way again. That is the fragility of the position he is in right now, even before you factor in everything building on the outside. A few weeks off the release date is noise, winning the appeal. That is the only development that meaningfully changes his trajectory. And winning it, while Garin James is confirming 30-plus escorts in state court, while co-conspirators are cracking, while state charges are reportedly being prepared. That is exponentially harder than it would have been in a quieter mommy. At sentencing in October 2025, 6 of Combs's 7 children spoke directly to the judge, pleading for leniency. Combs himself tearfully apologized to his children and his mother Janice, saying he was lost in his excess and his ego, and that family was all he had left. Over 70 letters were submitted pre-sentencing from family, friends, and associates, all arguing for mercy. Son Justin visited him at Fort Dix on Christmas Day 2025. One of his sons posted a New Year's resolution for 2026 that was 3 words, "Free my dad." And now Justin and Christian Combs have announced a docu-series on Zeus Network, featuring prison phone calls, family loyalty, and what they are calling untold truths. With 50 Cent's Netflix documentary already in circulation and the prosecution narrative dominating public conversation, the Sons are attempting to put a counter story into the world. Whether releasing a sympathetic family documentary while co-conspirators are cracking in state courtrooms is strategically sound is another question. But the family's position has not changed. They are not retreating. He looked like everything is okay, smiling in the library, pushing the cart, planning the comeback narrative. And all the while, Garin James confirmed 30-plus escorts under oath. Odell Beckham Jr. and Drusky are named defendants in an amended civil suit. His own sons are named in separate civil claims. State charges are reportedly on the way. The appeal hits oral arguments April 9th, 2026. And the pardon he personally requested from the President of the United States was confirmed publicly and denied. The list of names in this case has not stopped growing since Cassie Ventura filed her lawsuit in November of 2023. Every new name that appears makes the comeback story harder to write. Every co-conspirator who cracks in court adds another brick to the wall. And every court date added to the calendar is a reminder that for Sean Combs, the man who once controlled everything and everyone around him, control is the one thing he no longer has. That is where this stands. Stay locked in.